There is a kitchen detail that almost every house I have appraised recently gets wrong. And it is not what you think. It is not the paint color. It is not the kitchen island, but rather something situated right above your head. You'd be awesome if you subscribed and liked this video. 1. Decorative open shelving and exposed pantries. Last weekend, my daughter called me to boast about how she had just been browsing online and saw an incredibly beautiful kitchen, with ceramic dishes neatly arranged on a few wooden floating shelves, with no cabinet doors hiding them at all. She asked me if she should tear out all the upper cabinets to make open shelves like that. I just smiled and told her about the kitchen of my neighbor, Mrs. Carroll, who did the exact same thing 3 years ago when she remodeled her entire downstairs after retirement. The idea does sound appealing. The space looks more open, brighter, and exactly like the minimalist style that interior design magazines often shoot for covers. When Mrs. Carroll had just finished it, she even invited the whole neighborhood over to see it, and everyone praised her kitchen cabinets for looking like a showroom. But less than half a year later, I dropped by to visit and found her standing on a chair, hand holding a rag, wiping down every single plate one by one, her face looking somewhat tired. She told me that now she has to dedicate an entire afternoon every month just to dust all those dishes. If she doesn't wipe them, they look dull gray, losing all of their initial beauty. Everyone's kitchen has grease floating up when frying and sautéing, combined with airborne dust floating around all day. Those two things mix together into a sticky film that requires hand scrubbing to get clean. Wiping it dry with a regular paper towel does not work. Porcelain white dishware is still manageable, but items with patterns or gold rims, if scrubbed repeatedly, will eventually fade in color, which is a great pity. Mrs. Carroll has a plate set from back at her wedding. Now the gold rims have visibly faded compared to the ones bought later on, simply because they are left exposed all day in the air. Is open shelving ugly? Not at all. It is truly beautiful, but it is a beauty meant for taking photos, not a beauty meant for living with every day. Just try to imagine having a guest drop by unexpectedly, and your entire kitchen is completely exposed, from the kids' plastic cups to spice bottles that expired who knows when ago. Open shelving does not forgive clutter. It exposes everything to the light, including things you would never want anyone to see. For those who are still obsessed with that spacious look, I often advise not doing it to the entire kitchen. Choose just one small nook, a short section of the wall next to the window, for instance, spacious enough to display a few pieces you truly treasure. For the remaining part, just close the cabinet doors, trust me. If you are afraid that solid cabinets look heavy, choose deep pull-out drawers instead of standard cabinet doors. A gentle pull lets you see all the items inside without having to rummage around while still maintaining a neat appearance on the outside without wasting effort scrubbing every week. A few of my clients build their cabinets all the way to the ceiling, utilizing the full height of the kitchen with the topmost section for rarely used items like a dishware set used specifically for holidays and the lower section for daily necessities. It looks both tall and eliminates the dust-collecting gap above the cabinets, something that every house has but nobody pays attention to until the end-of-year deep cleaning. At that moment, they are shocked to find a dust layer a centimeter thick sitting silently up there for all this time. After that incident, Mrs. Carroll also moved almost all of her items back into closed cabinets, leaving exactly one small shelf near the sink to display a few glass cups she likes the most. She told me that now she gets to admire a few beautiful items while no longer having to strain her neck wiping for an entire afternoon every month. But if you have a family heirloom porcelain dishware set from your grandmother, or a few ceramic pieces bought during some trip that you want the whole family to see every day, then just build 1 or 2 short shelves. Do not hesitate. It is your house, it is your memory, and nobody has the right to tell you to hide it away in a closed cabinet. Just prepare yourself mentally to dust a bit more frequently, considering it a small price to pay in exchange for the joy of seeing them every morning. If you think open cabinetry is high maintenance, then the next mistake costs a full $1,000, yet nobody pays attention to it when selling a house. 2. The Waterfall Island countertop. There was a home seller in the Danville area who once walked me through his kitchen, pointed at the island with marble running straight down to the floor on both sides, which contractors call a waterfall style, and told me with a voice full of pride that this was precisely the focal point that would help the house sell for a higher price. Looking at it, it did indeed look elegant, exactly like walking into a high-end stone showroom. But when I asked him how much he spent on that part alone, the figure made me ask again just to be sure. Over $7,000 just to cut and install two 90-degree mitered stone panels on the sides of the island. The problem does not lie in the fact that it is ugly. The problem is that when buyers walk in, they glance at the side of the kitchen island for exactly 1 second and then walk straight out to look at the bathroom. Nobody pays extra money just because of that stone edge. Working in this profession for so many years, I have never once heard a client say, "I bought this house because of the Waterfall kitchen island." Not even a single time. There is another matter that few people mention, which is durability. Stone cut at a 90-degree angle is thinner and easier to crack than you think, especially at the joint between the countertop and the side panel. All it takes is a bar stool bumping into it a few times or someone's shoe heel kicking it, and a corner chips immediately. Repairing it almost requires redoing the entire panel, because natural stone is very difficult to patch to match the color and veining. Installing a beautiful countertop for a kitchen island is still a good idea. There is nothing wrong with that. Just do not pour all your money into the side of the island that, in reality, hardly anyone notices. Making a slightly eased or rounded stone edge is both much cheaper and safer during collisions, yet looks no less luxurious. The money saved, I often advise my clients to put toward a thicker countertop or to choose a quartzite with more beautiful veining. Something that home buyers see immediately upon walking through the door and remember much longer than the side of an island they never look closely at. Another way I often suggest is mixing materials. Keeping stone for the top surface while cladding the island base underneath with wood or painting it a contrasting color. This both creates a visual focal point and saves a good amount of money while looking much more soulful than a solid block of one-color stone from top to bottom, which looks somewhat monotonous. If your budget is generous and you truly love that luxurious look, there is nothing wrong with doing it, as long as you are doing it for yourself and do not think it will help sell the house for a better price. Because practically speaking, it does not help much. Now we have come to the exact thing I reminded you about at the very beginning of the video. The thing situated right above your head. 3. The lighting system with only one ceiling light. I remember one time going to appraise a house in Walnut Creek. The homeowner very proudly led me into the kitchen, boasting about the crystal chandelier hanging in the middle of a ceiling that was nearly 13 feet high. It was beautiful indeed, I had to admit. But when I stood right at the sink area and bent down to try washing my hands, my entire face was cast in darkness. The light from that chandelier was half blocked by my very own head. That is the scenario that happens with nearly every kitchen that relies solely on a single light source in the middle of the ceiling. It sounds absurd, because with a light so large and so bright, how could it lack light? But physics does not care about your feelings. When you stand at the countertop chopping vegetables or stand next to the sink, your own body becomes an obstruction, casting a shadow directly on the exact spot where you need to see most clearly. The result is that you hold a knife chopping onions in dim light, relying only on feel rather than seeing clearly where the knife edge is going. I once spoke with a general contractor who had been in the trade for over 20 years. He told me that the majority of minor accident cases in the kitchen, hands being cut, knives slipping, are not because people are clumsy but because they cannot see clearly what they are doing. It sounds simple, but it really is true. The kitchen is a place with sharp knives, water, and fire, not a living room meant for sitting down to relax and look at a chandelier. The mistake here is not choosing an ugly light, but rather the mindset that just one light source is enough. A kitchen needs to be illuminated in separate layers, with each layer serving a different purpose. The first layer is ambient lighting, usually recessed pot lights spread evenly throughout the room, helping the space avoid dark corners. The second layer, the most important one that a great many houses skip, is task lighting, meaning LED strip lights, mounted right underneath the bottom of the upper cabinets, shining straight down onto the countertop and the cooktop surface. This is the exact thing that helps you see the knife clearly, see the flame clearly, and see the doneness of the food clearly. The third layer is accent lighting, such as pendant lights above the kitchen island, turned on in the evening when the whole family sits to drink tea or chat, creating a cozy atmosphere rather than needing to be too bright. The cost to install an additional LED strip light under the cabinets is not at all as expensive as many people imagine, and this is the investment that I think is the most worth every single penny in the entire kitchen, far outperforming many other expensive decorative items. You only need the electrician to run wires once and mount a separate switch, and it is done for decades to come. Of course, if your kitchen is mainly used just to reheat food with a microwave, and you rarely touch knives and cutting boards, then one ceiling light is also completely fine. Nobody forces you to build all 3 layers of light. But if you actually cook every day, do not begrudge a few $100s for an under-cabinet lighting system, because that is something you will feel immediately from the very first meal after installation. There is another trend. This time, it is not that you cannot see clearly, but rather that you have to guess blindly to see where the cabinet opens. 4. Handleless flat panel kitchen cabinets. I must confess beforehand, I myself was a victim of this exact trend. 10 years ago, when remodeling my own kitchen, I was obsessed with the image of completely flat cabinet faces, without a single visible handle, looking as if the cabinets would automatically open when you touched them. I spent a fair amount of money to install a whole system of push-to-open mechanisms for nearly all the upper and lower kitchen cabinets. To tell you the truth, less than a year later I already felt regret. The spring mechanism inside started to sluggishly degrade. There were cabinet doors that required being pushed 2 or 3 times before they would pop open, and some doors would pop open half-heartedly, not matching the force of my hand pressure at all. Every single morning was the same. Being in a rush to go to work yet standing idly in front of the cabinets looking for a mug, my hand pushing back and forth as if playing a game of Minesweeper. It was truly a small daily nightmare. That is not all. The flat design means that the cabinet edges are often routed with a small J-pull groove to slide your hand in to open, and that groove happens to be the ideal place for breadcrumbs, flour dust, and flying grease to splatter into and get trapped inside. If you want to wipe it clean, you have to use a small brush to poke into every single crevice, which is much more labor-intensive compared to just needing to wipe down a regular handle. If your house has young grandchildren who often visit, that glossy flat cabinet face will quickly be covered in messy handprints, no longer looking as luxurious as advertised. After a few years of enduring it, I decided to replace everything back with traditional handles. Choose brass handles if you like a warm, classic feel, or matte black if you want to create a strong contrast against light-colored cabinets. There is no need to look to buy from high-end designer brands just to waste money. Go to the home improvement store near your house, and there are plenty of types to choose from, with very affordable pricing. The most important thing is to choose one style, one color, and use it consistently for the entire kitchen, avoiding a situation where each cabinet has a different style of handle looking cluttered. A handleless cabinet system looks very modern in photos and in shiny showroom display models. That is beyond dispute. If you truly like that minimalist look and are willing to accept having to occasionally repair the opening mechanism or diligently wipe it down more frequently, then go ahead and do it. That is your right. Just do not let yourself be caught by surprise as I once was, because calling a contractor to fix it at that point is not cheap at all. 5. The all-white or all-gray monochromatic kitchen. Not long ago, I took a young couple to look at a newly constructed house in the Pleasanton area. The kitchen in it was beautiful in a magazine-like way, with pristine white cabinets and white countertops, and the walls were white as well. The wife stood in the middle of the kitchen, looked around for a moment, then turned to me and said something I will remember forever. "It looks so clean. It looks more like my child's dentist's office than our kitchen." They did not buy that house, even though everything else was fine. I understand why many people choose white or gray when building a new kitchen. It is safe. It is easy to coordinate, and everyone thinks neutral colors never go out of style. There was a time 15 or 20 years ago when that was indeed true. But times have changed. Home buyers now, especially young families looking for a house, want to see a bit of personality, a bit of warmth in their living space, rather than walking into a sterile room. There is one thing few people notice. Absolute white exposes everything to the light, in the most literal sense. A drop of coffee splashed onto the countertop, a streak of grease flying out when frying fish, and a water stain at the bottom of the sink, all of them show up perfectly clearly against the white background. I have a client who once told me that she no longer dared to cook comfortably in her own kitchen because at all times she had to watch out not to get any spot dirty. It might sound like an exaggeration, but That is the real feeling of a great many people living in all-white kitchens. Gray is not much better either. A cold gray kitchen, especially the blue-toned gray that many contractors often pitched a few years ago, has now started to look dated and devoid of life. When you stand cooking in a space that does not have even a bit of warm color, the feeling it brings is not sophistication but rather emptiness. The way I often suggest to clients is doing two-tone cabinetry. Keep the upper cabinets light-colored so that the ceiling does not feel weighed down, keeping the space looking tall and airy. But for the lower base cabinets, boldly choose a color with more depth, which could be sage green, deep navy blue, or a dark wood stain brown. These colors are not only visually appealing, but they also have a practical advantage that few people notice. They hide dirt much better than white. Grease stains and clinging handprints all show up much less against a dark-colored background. You do not need to change the entire thing. If your kitchen is currently all white, just repainting or replacing the base cabinets alone will already create a major difference, yet the cost is much lower than redoing it from scratch. That is the way many families I have worked with chose, both keeping within the budget and bringing a feeling that the kitchen has much more soul. Of course, if your taste truly is absolute cleanliness, a pristine laboratory style, and you do not mind the daily cleaning chores, then go ahead and make it all white. Nobody is stopping you. It is your house. You live in it and not me. Just choose it because you genuinely like it, rather than choosing it just because you think it is the safest option. Bonus: cheap rescue tips for a flawed kitchen. Now, if you have watched up to this point and find your kitchen has caught almost all the mistakes I just listed, and your wallet does not permit tearing it down to redo it right at this moment, just stay calm. I do not always advise clients to spend tens of thousands of dollars to remodel. There are days I only give them 3 small tips, done during a single weekend afternoon, yet the results are visible immediately. If your kitchen currently has open shelving exposing everything to the outside, do not rush to tear down the shelves. Go to the store and buy a few wicker baskets. The type with handles is even better. And then gather all the miscellaneous items inside them, arranging the baskets on the shelves instead of displaying every individual item. The human eye looking at a neat basket will find it much more pleasant than looking at a cluttered pile of dishes. And you also save yourself from having to wipe down every single item. If your kitchen lacks task lighting, as I mentioned in the section above, but you do not want to hire an electrician to drill into the walls yet, there is a temporary solution that is still surprisingly effective. Buy a roll of self-adhesive LED strip lights, stick them directly onto the underside of the upper cabinets, and plug them into the nearest electrical outlet. And that is it. It is not as beautiful as a professional recessed system, but it is bright enough for you to see the knife clearly when chopping onions. And the price is only a few dozen dollars, with no need to call a contractor. As for the tip I like the most, the cheapest yet the one with the most noticeable result, it is changing the light bulbs. A great many kitchens I have ever stepped into still use the old warm yellow light bulbs. That light is suited for bedrooms rather than kitchens. It makes everything look yellowish tinted and devoid of life. Just spend about $20 and replace all the old bulbs with daylight LED bulbs, around 4,000 to 5,000 Kelvin, and the entire kitchen is like getting a brand new coat immediately. It looks brighter, cleaner, and gives off a much neater feeling even though you have not touched anything else in the kitchen. If after watching this you find your kitchen has caught a few of these mistakes, do not rush to call a contractor to tear it all down. Choose the exact single thing that causes the most annoyance for you every day and fix that first. Remodeling in phases is both gentle on the wallet and helps you be certain about what you truly need to change, instead of acting on a passing whim.